Hey, Larken Rose here. When the average person first starts to consider the possibility of a stateless society, a world in which there is no government, there is no ruling class, invariably they will ask questions about, well, how will this be done and how will this be handled and what will be done about that? And the main reason they do that is because people have very little practice imagining being in charge of themselves and not beholden to somebody else. So they're used to hearing centralized master plans from all sorts of political parasites who say, well, here's how everything is going to work. In other words, there's one person or there's a small group of people that has some plan and everybody else is forced to go along with it. And you can see this in a bunch of ways, whether you're talking about taking care of the poor or defending against whatever. It's always, well, here are the rules that these rule makers are going to issue and force everybody to go along with. So there's a centralized master plan. Now, it never works out the way they say it's going to. It's always a catastrophe. But people are so accustomed to thinking inside that template, thinking inside the idea that, well, there will be a set of rules of this is how things will work and the rest of us will follow it, that it's uncomfortable and difficult for the average person to not think in those patterns, to think in terms of, well, there will be a bunch of people and people will figure out what they're doing. So if people ask me, well, what will be done about this? I usually respond by saying, well, I'm not going to be in charge of you. What would you do about it? I mean, I could tell you what I might do, what I might suggest, what I might predict other people would do. But when the ruling class is gone, I'm not going to be the new ruling class. I'm not going to be deciding for you what you're going to do or what you would agree with. So a lot of the time, my response is, well, answer your own question. If you say, what will be done about, if you're speaking in the passive tense, well, done by what? By people? Because you're one of the people. Why are you asking me? Like, I could tell you what I would do, but I can't tell you what you would do. Only you can tell you what you would do, but most people don't have practice doing that. So I thought I'd make a little thought experiment here to give people at least the start of some practice of thinking like a self-owning individual, and more specifically, imagining what that would mean in a world of people who did that. Because it's so easy for people to just think, oh, it would be chaos and mayhem, because they don't know how to picture it. They've never seen it before. They haven't seen a society without a ruling class. So they can just imagine all sorts of like chaos and mayhem and every man for himself. Like a lot of people make that assumption, which there's no rational reason to make that assumption. But because they haven't seen a society without a bunch of political parasites bossing people around and stealing their money, they have a hard time imagining what it would be like. So I thought I'd make this video. Actually, this will probably turn into a series of videos that basically helps you, the viewer, answer your own questions. Instead of me saying, this is how everything would happen, as if I would know exactly what billions of people are going to individually decide to do, I will walk you through a series of things that I think will get you to answer your own questions about what would happen and how things would be handled. Not just what would you do about it and what would you feel okay doing, but probably how are most people going to deal with this and address this. So I made this little setup. The scenario is one I've talked about before, where you and a bunch of other people, in this case like 30 some people, that you don't know are like shipwrecked on some island. And there's lots of natural resources and there's fresh water and stuff, so you're not all doomed to immediately die. But if you were suddenly stuck somewhere where there's no government, there's no hierarchy, you can't call 911, it's just you and a bunch of other normal people that you don't know, how would you approach it? How would you even think about things? What would be your concerns and what would you do about them? So, here's my little model to help people start to consider such things. So, here we go. Here's the island. It's a little bit bigger than this, you can imagine. Here's you. Here's a bunch of people you don't know. Now, for some of the examples, here's me, too. I happen to be on the same ship as you, whether you know who I am or not. So, You're on this island with a bunch of people you don't know. Now, it's understandable if your first concern is, look at all these people. I don't know what they're capable of. I don't know what they believe. I don't know how they behave. I don't know who they are. Now, if you start by imagining, put myself back in the group, you start by imagining the worst case scenario. Let's say, well, these people are like half decent. By the way, never mind the colors and the size of the pieces. It's all just people. So these people are like decent, nice people, but all of these are like psychopathic serial killer cannibals. And so let's say you start by imagining that. Well, they're all terrifying. What am I going to do? Well, I need protection from them. This is why I need a government. Okay, here's your government. We'll put them up on the throne. Now they're in charge. No, not them. They're some of the psychos. Yeah, if you get the psychos in power, they just legitimize killing and eating you. So, but I need protection from them, so I need government. So, like, maybe these nice people. Okay, but why do you think it's going to be your decision who gets to be on the throne? It's not. So, is there any form of government that will actually protect you if the majority is scary people? Like, democracy isn't going to do it because these guys outnumber you. They're going to vote to have some of theirs on the throne, and then they're going to legalize killing and eating you. So that's not going to go too well. Well, how about a constitutional republic that has a Bill of Rights? Why would they pass that? And even if they did, they would like elect representatives who would go up here and then decide that they're allowed to kill and eat you. So yeah, that doesn't work either. The idea that you can be surrounded by a whole bunch of nasty people, but somehow have a system that consists only of the people that will convince the nasty people to not hurt you is ridiculous. Like, even if, okay, we got a government here of some of the good people and they passed a law saying don't kill and eat people. Okay? And then the other ones do. Now what? Like, it doesn't stop that. In case you haven't noticed, laws don't make murder not happen. They don't make robbery not happen. They try to, like, punish somebody after the fact. But if the world is a bunch of nasty people, no system's going to do anything anyway. So, now, luckily, the world isn't 80% serial killing cannibals. Like, most people are trying to do the right thing. But let's suppose, or we'll just have you suppose, there may still be some untrustworthy people in here who may be capable of nasty things. Stealing, maybe even murder, like you don't know. You don't know these people and I don't know these people. Now, if you're on this island, this is where this becomes a sort of a mental test for you. If you say, you're asking me now, I'm over here, well, what would we do about the violent people? And I would say, well, why the hell are you asking me? First of all, I'm not in charge here. Do you see them bowing to me? No, they're a bunch of people I don't know either. I could tell you what I would do. I might start by like talking to people and see if they're psychos. But if you're asking, what do we do about the bad people? Well, my approach would be, I want the means to be able to defend myself. Like, maybe I'll make a spear, and I suggest you do likewise. But consider the whole question in this setting. Like, it's easy when you're talking about all of society, well, what will be done about? Well, in this setting, there is no imaginary authority to beg to do anything. There's just people. So if you ask the whole group, what will we do about bad people in our group who might do bad things? There is nobody to answer for the group. Well, I'm going to say what we're all going to do in response to bad people who do things. No, you're not. You're just a guy. You can say what you would do. I could say what I would do. And I could ask you, this is you, remember, what would you do? What would you feel justified doing? What do you think would actually be a good idea? Now, if you talk to people and get to know people and get to trust a bunch of people, you may form an alliance. Let's say you get to know these people. Let's say you even get to know me and you trust me enough that you don't think I'm going to kill you and steal your stuff because I'm one of those weirdos who believes in self-ownership. And I respect that in everybody. So let's say you talk to these people and you trust these people. Well, what do you have the right to do? What do you, according to you, like answering your own question, what do you have the right to do? Well, we can get together with these guys and say, okay, should we sort of, like, if we sort of trust each other, should we maybe build some huts close together and we'll sort of live and within yelling distance of each other? So if one of those people happens to be, we'll talk quietly so they can't hear us. If one of those people happens to be a psycho, well, we'll be close enough that we'll be able to yell for each other, and we're all going to make spears, and we'll know to come running if one of us yells, help, help, help. So, okay, we got that going. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly valid. That's just an exercise of the right of self-defense. It's cooperation. It's organization. Like maybe we even do a thing where like we take turns standing guard or patrolling the area or something, walking around. But we're still just people. Now, would you, again, I'm asking you to answer your own question, would you feel justified saying, well, I'm not sure I trust those people. Like, some of them might be mean, I'm not really sure. So what I'm going to do is appoint somebody. I'm going to appoint you. There. You're now the king. I want you to force all of them to hand over money and maybe conscript a few and make them defend us. First of all, do you think that's moral? Do you have the right to do that to those people? Because guess what? You just became the sketchy, nasty person that's trying to rob them without knowing them. And do you think that's going to go well? Like suggesting that this guy dominate them all for your own protection, supposedly? No. Now, would that be your answer in this scenario? I'm going to go out on a limb and say there is no chance in hell that would be your answer. If you're dumb enough and insane enough and immoral enough to suggest that, you'll quickly find that nobody's going along with it. None of the good people are going to go along with that, with you appointing an extortionist, and none of the mystery people, good or bad, are going to go along with that either. They're not going to put up with that crap. So in this setting, literally nobody would resort to the insanity of government. It's just something people believe in because in the setting they grew up in, they were told that it's necessary and legitimate and valid. So when it comes to defending against scary people, which is one of people's main concerns when they start to think of a stateless society, just coming to grips with the fact that there's just people is one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest steps. When you just understand that much, all there is people. Now in this little scenario, there's like 30 people, or 32, I don't even know if I have all the chess pieces here, and in real life there's millions and billions. But the equation doesn't change, the reality doesn't change, it's still just people. And people think of government as something outside of humanity. Like, and some people will actually say, well, I don't trust people. I don't know what these people are up to. I need government to protect me from them. Okay, what's government made up of? People. Okay, here's a couple people. There's your government to protect you. Not those people. Those are the worst people. Yeah, funny how that works, isn't it? The worst people in society are the first ones to gravitate towards positions of power. So the idea of making a position of power to protect you from the worst people doesn't work that great when the worst people are always first in line to be in that position. As if you read a history book, you can see that's how it happens pretty much every stinking time. So if you grasp that the whole world is just this on a much bigger scale, and you think in terms of what would you do as a mere mortal, and each one of these people, whether they're nasty or nice or combination or whatever, they're just individuals. And we're so used to thinking in terms of master plans, here I'm going to put the group back together, that people actually imagine there's such a thing. Oh no, your shoes fell off. People imagine that there's such a thing. I'm going to throw your shoes away. Sorry, you're barefoot on the island now. They imagine that there's such a thing as some overarching thing that controls all the people, but isn't the people. And no, there's no such thing. There can be some of the people, these people are going to pretend to have the right to rule, and these people are going to be their enforcers and are going to beat you up if you disobey the dictates of these people. Okay, did that improve anything? Was that moral? All you did was take from this group of people who are still just people. They're still just mortals. They're not perfect. They're not morally perfect. They're not perfect as far as intelligence or knowing the truth. They're just people. So if as a result of being scared of people, you took some of those people that you were scared of and gave them the power to violently dominate everybody, including you, that's kind of stupid. And in this scale, everybody, literally everybody, recognizes this. And I've done the island analogy with a few groups. It's been a while, but I've done that before. And when we bring up something, I'll give an example in a second, of some problem, and they talk about, well, what would you do about it? And I can say what I would do about it, and you can say what you would do about it, and each person can say what they would do about it. Like if there's a problem, if somebody's getting violent or stealing stuff, like, okay, how are we going to handle that? What are we going to do about it? It stops being a question of what will be done about it. Like in the passive tense, as if something's just being done, but people aren't doing it. Like, what will be done about it is a question in this setting. What will each of these people decide to do about it? Maybe some will decide to do nothing. Maybe some will decide to do something that's way overboard. But the idea that there is such a thing as an overarching thing that controls all the people that comes from not the people is ridiculous. And it's already ridiculous just in everyday life. The idea that, well, nobody's going to steal my stuff because there's a law that says they're not allowed to. Oh, really? Does that make it not happen? Oh, no. Golly gee. There can be rules and bad people will break the rules. Who'd have thought? So just the process of thinking in terms of this as the group is literally an exercise to get you to think, first of all, to answer your own question, by getting you to think like a rational grown-up, instead of like somebody who's whining to some magical deity called government that's above all the human beings and is somehow making them behave in a certain way. There's no such thing. It's just people. And putting a few people above the rest of the group and letting them boss us around, well, read a stinking history book and see how well that turns out. But we need a law against theft. Okay, so here we go. We'll do this example. Maybe I'll finish up this video with this example, but I'll continue with this series later. Let's say Clear Horsey. Clear Horsey was caught stealing some stuff. We all know Clear Horsey did it. He was caught in the act. He admitted it. He was all grouchy. He stole, let's say, people were fishing or something, and he stole somebody's fish that the people caught. Now there's a bunch of people here, and we all know Horsey did it. Now, the process of finding out whether Horsey actually did it, and the concept of due process and all that, if Horsey denies it, is another process, and we can go through that later. But right now, we all know Horsey did it. He admitted it. He tried to steal some fishies, and he's like, yeah, I was hungry. Screw you. So, you ask me, what do we do about this? And I ask you, why the hell are you asking me? I'm just a guy too. I can tell you what I might do, but I'm not in charge of what you're going to do. You're in charge of what you're going to do. He's in charge of what he's going to do. He's in charge of what he's going to do. They're each in charge of what they're going to do. They're going to decide it. Now, what most people want when they ask that is a guarantee. How will there be a guarantee that we have justice and something that works? And the answer is, there stinking won't be a guarantee. There is never a guarantee that justice will prevail. And putting some people on a throne and saying, oh, we shall all bow to you and do as you say, not only is that not a guarantee that justice is going to be done, like to Horsey, Clear Horsey the thief, but it is absolutely a guarantee that these guys are going to rob everybody else. Because you just gave them permission to. You just told them they have a right to, because now they're government and you agreed they have superhuman rights. So the only thing you're guaranteeing by having a government is that people will be robbed and bossed around and dominated and subjugated. So back to us mere mortals on this island who don't really know each other yet. And we find out that Horsey stole some fish. And you go, what will be done about this? And I say, what will you do about this? And I say to all the other people, what will everybody here do about it? I can tell you what I might suggest or what I might be think I was justified in doing myself. The thing is, if there isn't some magic, the rules or some magic authority that we're all imagining is above us, then each of us, if we're going to do anything, are responsible for what we do. We can't say we were just following orders. So let's say Fuzzy Castle. This is clear and fuzzy. That's high-tech terminology I'm using. Fuzzy Castle says, I don't like thieves, so I'm going to go punch Clear Horsey in the face. And you may say, that seems a little uncivilized. And other people may go, well, Clear Horsey kind of deserves it. We need a deterrent. And I might suggest, well, there might be a better way to do it. Like, tell him you're going to get punched in the face unless you go catch twice as many fish as you stole and then give back to the person you stole it from what you stole and then some on top of that. And other people might go, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And that's a little bit more civilized than punching him. And Castle guy might go, yeah, but I'm just going to punch him in the face anyway. I'm not going to wait around. And Horsey may go, oh, don't punch me in the face. The fact that it is uncertain and not just a rule, that is just reality, but it's a reality people don't like to admit. And it's a reality that the belief in government lets them pretend isn't reality. Because even if there's a government, that doesn't change any of this. There could be some powerful people saying, okay, Fuzzy Castle, like, don't punch Clear Horsey in the face. But he still might. Like, that sort of thing still happens. Well, then they'll send their thugs after Fuzzy Castle. Yeah, but that still happens. That's still just reality. People decide what they do. So the only difference here is that with the belief in government, every single individual still decides for himself what he's going to do. The difference is the vast majority no longer accept responsibility for what they do. So Fuzzy Castle, who wants to punch Clear Horse in the face for stealing stuff because he really doesn't like thieves, he's not going to go, Pedge, I was just following orders. No, you stinking weren't. Nobody told you to do that. You decided to do it. Which means if some of us think you went too far, we might have to decide, all right, what are we going to do about Fuzzy Castle? And maybe that'll happen and maybe that won't. But in no case can you, without the myth of government and authority, can you pretend that, oh, what I'm personally doing isn't my responsibility? But that's exactly what law enforcers always do. Hey, I don't make the law. I'm just punching you in the face because King Clear told me to, so I'm not responsible. First of all, yes, you are responsible, but notice how the belief in authority, it doesn't make there be any extra virtue. All it does is remove the feeling of responsibility from everybody else, including somebody who isn't even really involved. So let's say Fuzzy Bishop is the guy that Clear Horsey stole fish from. And we all believe in a king and an authority because we have to have authority, otherwise it would be chaos. And he gets fish stolen. He runs to Clear King and says, he stole my fish. And this Clear King says, you know what to do, enforcer, pitch. And Fuzzy Castle punches Clear Horsey in the face. This guy helped to have it happen. He knew it was going to happen when he squealed on him, but he accepts no responsibility. He's, oh, well, I just said what happened. You can't blame me. And yeah, I kind of voted for King Clear to do that. And all the other people voted for it too. It doesn't give any morality. It doesn't give any extra virtue. It doesn't give any extra intelligence. The belief in authority just gives everybody an excuse for pretending they're not responsible for what they do. And that, unfortunately, is why, here's you again, here's me, it's so tempting to say what will be done about it as if it's going to be somebody else's responsibility what gets done about it so that it isn't yours. Because when it's your responsibility to decide what to do about it, then you have to think and act like a grown-up and go, well, what would I feel okay doing about Clear Horsey stealing from people? Maybe I'll talk to him first and see why you thought that. Maybe I want to punch him in the face. But whatever I do, this is you, I'm responsible for. That's why people want statism. That's why people want the belief in authority, is because they imagine that it absolves them from the responsibility for what they personally do. But it doesn't. Now, when I've done this in person, with groups of people, you're no longer king. Get back in the crowd, you mere peasant. When I've done this with groups of people and ask, well, what would you do about it? And people have different ideas and we have a discussion. And every single time I've done this, the discussion wants to make sure that even the guy who like stole a fishy isn't like tortured to death or something ridiculous. It's like we as normal, decent people, we even want to be sort of nice to the person who's a thief. Like to some degree, and yet we want there to be something that'll hopefully make him not do that and maybe repay his past victims and things like that. That is the motivation for all these mere mortals, including you and including me, to try to make actual justice happen. So the victim, Fuzzy Bishop, who got his fish stolen, hopefully he'll be made whole. Like we'll tell... Like, if the whole group tells Clear Horsey, look, we really don't like that you did that, and we can all say this, we really don't like that you did that, give him back the fishy, and then that much again. Like, go catch some more fishy and give him extra. Otherwise, we're all going to shun you, and you're going to live on the other side of the island because we want to have nothing to do with you because we can't trust you because you're a thief. And on a level like that, that works fine. Now, the worse it gets, the more uncomfortable it gets, which is just reality. So let's say, now Horsey murdered Bishop because he didn't murdered Fuzzy Bishop because he didn't want to do it. Okay, and you say, well, no, see, Larken, see, this is why we need government, because now what do we do about it? And my response is the same. What would you do about it? What would you feel justified in doing about it? And this is where it gets serious and scary and really, like, you have to be really damn responsible, because if you're talking about dealing with an actual murderer, and you're talking about, what, cage him forever? Maybe even kill him? Then you realize the full weight of the responsibility you have to bear to be a grown-up. And that responsibility is why people believe in government, because they want it to be somebody else's problem. Which is why they're so eager to appoint a master and go, well, he can decide, then it's not my responsibility and I don't have to do anything. I can just hide over here and pretend I have nothing to do with it. And all the people can go, yeah, we're all just going to hide over here and pretend we have nothing to do with it, except the enforcer who may literally execute Clear Horsey but say, well, I have nothing to... I was just following orders, whether I was the guy who arrested him or put him in the electric chair or pulled the switch. Don't blame me. It's not my responsibility. I just followed orders. I just did as I was told. So now Clear Horsey got electrocuted in the government version. And nobody accepts responsibility. Even King Clear just says, well, I just passed a law that supports the death penalty in the case of yada, yada, yada. So you have a whole group of people and violence occurring with nobody accepting responsibility for that happening. Now, I'm going to end this part one of this video with this question. Which do you think is going to have the better outcome? Here's you. In a society where something really serious like murder happens, which do you think, this is you, answer your own question, which do you think is more likely to have the better outcome when it comes to morality and justice and keeping the good people safe? A situation in which everybody accepts that they are personally responsible for their actions, even if that requires outright force, maybe even deadly force against, some psycho killer. Or a situation in which absolutely nobody accepts personal responsibility for the actual outcome. Which would you expect to give a better result more often? Because a stateless society is the first one, where everybody is stuck having to accept personal responsibility for what they do because there is no order giver or lawmaker to push the blame onto. Well, I was just doing as I was told. No, you weren't. Nobody told you to do anything. What you did, you choose to do. Or the option of government where everybody who votes, everybody who pays taxes, everybody who funds the machine, everybody who enforces its violence, they all act as if there's a thing called the law doing it, all the way up to killing people. And none of them think that any people actually killed him. Well, I just pulled the switch. I just did as I was told. I followed all the procedures that it told me to. Well, I just passed the law. Well, we just paid our taxes that enable that, and we just voted for him to do that. The outcome of government being horribly oppressive and brutal is not just coincidence. That's what happens when you remove from the minds of everybody the idea that they're responsible for what they condone and for what they personally do. That is what the belief in authority does. It's what the belief in authority does in your head too. Because if you think authority is real and you ask for there to be an authority to deal with Horsey, it's because you don't want the idea of mere mortals, including you, being personally responsible for having to decide what to do about uncomfortable or scary situations like a thief or a murderer. So you want to pass off that responsibility. Instead of being a grown-up, you want to think and act like a child and beg for there to be some authority over everybody that controls and dominates everybody and makes it so none of them feel responsible to actually make justice happen themselves or to be responsible for what they themselves advocate or personally do. So, in this island setting, what would you suggest be done about a thief or a murderer? Think about that, and you can put it in the comments if you want, but just think about it, because the mental process of practicing being a grown-up instead of having an authority to imagine you can defer your responsibility to. You're one of the grown-ups. That's all there is. There's a bunch of people. You don't know them. They're not all necessarily good or trustworthy, but it's just people. That's what there is. That's all there is. That's society. There's no magic, all-knowing, all-powerful goodness called authority that's going to keep all these mere mortals in check. These mere mortals, that's all there is. And you're one of them. Do you want those mere mortals accepting responsibility for what they do, including the responsibility to determine right from wrong and to act accordingly? Or do you want all of them throwing that out the window, accepting no responsibility for what they do or what they fund by way of taxes or what they advocate by way of voting in favor of having a violent authoritarian psycho with his enforcers forcibly inflicting on everyone else whatever arbitrary crap he comes up with? Because in this little setting and in the setting called Earth, those are the two choices: authoritarianism or self-ownership. In this little setting, which would you choose? And if you expand it to the whole world, then which would you choose? Yeah, you're still stuck with a whole bunch of people that you don't know, and some of them might be nasty, and some of them... Will it help to take some of them and put them on a throne and make all the people involved no longer imagine themselves to be responsible for what they themselves do? You can theorize about it, or you can read a history book and see the real world results of the belief in authority, which is that, yeah, you can start with a population where some people are untrustworthy or nasty or malicious, and you can appoint a government which will amplify that malice and destruction and theft and murder by a factor of thousands or millions. That's what happens in the real world when people throw away their personal responsibility to an imaginary authority. So, is that what you would choose in this island setting for yourself? It's not what I would choose. No thanks. What would you choose? Answer your own question. I can't handle the question.